There's a moment, right before you do something unforgivable, when your body feels too quiet. Like the air thickens, just slightly. Like the world's holding its breath, waiting to see if you're really that selfish. I was. Chris was sitting across from me in the booth at Gino's, the cheap Italian place we've been going to since we were broke college kids and couldn't afford anything fancier than garlic knots and house wine. Same table, same beat-up menus, but everything else, different. I watched him swirl his drink, eyes distant, a deep crease between his brows. He looked tired, the kind of tired that seeps in, bone deep, like someone who's been carrying someone else's weight too long. I think you should break up with her, I said. Just like that. No lead up. No preamble. Just the drop. Chris blinked. What? With Lena? I said, trying to keep my tone even. I think you need to let her go. The words felt like a betrayal, but also a relief. Like stretching a cramp. He stared at me for a long time. I didn't flinch. I couldn't afford to. She's your girlfriend, not your responsibility. I added, quieter now. She's not growing. You are. It sounded so clinical, so rehearsed. And it was. I'd practiced that line in the mirror 100 times, trying to find the version of it that didn't make me sound like a jealous monster. Spoiler alert, there isn't one. He leaned back slowly, processing. I saw the flicker in his eyes, shock, then something close to anger, then nothing. Just blank. You think I don't know she's struggling? He said finally. You think I haven't been there for every meltdown, every paycheck she missed, every time she called herself a failure? I didn't answer. Because yeah, I knew. I'd watched him carry all of it. And somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling proud of him for it. I started feeling envious. Envious of her. Of how much space she took up in his heart. I'd been his best friend since freshman orientation. Chris was the kind of guy who remembered your drink order from one conversation, who offered his hoodie to strangers in the rain. He loved hard. He forgave fast. It was maddening. And somewhere between shared textbooks and 3 a.m. pizza runs, I fell in love with him. Quietly. Painfully. Hopelessly. I tried dating other people. Tried being the good friend. Tried pretending Lena was someone I could learn to like. But every time she leaned on him like he was her anchor, every time he showed up for her when she didn't deserve it, something in me soured. I saw her as dead weight. Uneducated. Unemployed. Unmotivated. She dropped out of her associate's program 2 years ago and hadn't held a steady job since. Chris worked 60 hours a week. She scrolled Instagram on his couch. But here's the part one didn't want to admit, not even to myself. I wasn't asking him to leave her because she was dragging him down. I was asking because I wanted to be the one lifting him up. I wanted him to choose me. Chris's jaw tightened. You've never liked her. That's not fair, I said, even though it absolutely was. I tried. No, you tolerated her. Like she was some stray I brought home and refused to put back out in the rain. I looked down at the condensation on my water glass, the way it pooled and dripped and felt like guilt with a heartbeat. I think we could be good together, I said. You and me. I've thought about it. Hell, I've felt it, for years. You can't tell me you haven't noticed something between us. Chris looked like I'd slapped him. You waited until I was drowning, he said slowly. And then you asked me to throw her overboard. I swallowed. My throat felt like sandpaper. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. He stood up. The table shifted slightly with the sudden movement. The server glanced over nervously. I need some air, he muttered, already walking away. I didn't follow. I sat there in that sticky red booth, surrounded by the smell of marinara and old regrets, wondering if I'd just blown up the only real connection I'd ever had for the chance to rewrite it into something else. The check sat unopened beside me. The silence pressed down like a verdict. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't know if I was the villain or just the one finally telling that. You ever look back at old photos and spot it, that one moment where things started to go sideways? Not the big blowout, not the crash, but the tiny lean, the shift, like watching the first crack splinter across glass. For me, that crack showed up junior year, spring break. Chris had just started dating Lena. Back then, she wasn't the girlfriend I asked him to leave. She was just the girl from his anthropology class. Nose ring, too much eyeliner, always wore those giant combat boots that thudded down the hallway like a drumbeat. She was loud, opinionated, messy in the kind of way that looked confident if you didn't stare too long. Chris liked her immediately, said she was real, which, coming from him, meant something. I didn't get it. Not at first. We went to the beach that March, the three of us. A mismatched trio if there ever was one. I had packed like we were attending a business retreat. Lena brought a single backpack and a ukulele she didn't know how to play. Chris split the difference, as always, tossing all our stuff in his trunk like it didn't weigh anything. I remember watching them on the sand one afternoon. Chris buried up to his ribs, Lena dumping buckets of wet sand on his head while he fake gasped for help. She looked free. He looked happy. And I looked away. That was the first time I felt it. The pull. The jealousy that didn't make sense, that had nothing to do with logic or labels. It wasn't even romantic yet. Just raw. Like something primal woke up inside me and whispered, "You're losing him." But it wasn't just her. It was him too. The way Chris laughed when she teased him. The way he instinctively reached for her hand without even thinking. I'd never had that with anyone. Not even close. I told myself I was just lonely. That it was nostalgia. That it would pass. Spoiler, it didn't. Over time, Lena moved into his life like smoke through a crack in the wall. One drawer at his apartment, then two. Then half the closet. She dropped out of school halfway through senior year. Said she wanted to find herself. I tried to respect it. People take weird paths, right? But the cracks started showing fast. She'd sleep till noon. Forgot job interviews. Blew rent money on crystals and thrifted fur coats. Chris made excuses for her, like he was playing translator for someone who refused to learn the language. She's just going through a phase, he told me once over beers. She needs time. And you're giving it to her like it's unlimited. I snapped. He didn't answer. Just stared into his bottle, like maybe it held better advice than I did. There were good days, sure. Nights we'd all pile onto his couch with bad movies and worse pizza. Lena would steal half my fries and call me a snob. I'd roll my eyes and pretend it didn't sting. Sometimes, she made me laugh, like, actually laugh. But even then, something always felt off. Like I was watching a play and I didn't get the script. I think deep down, I never hated her. Not really. I hated that she got there first. That she got to fall asleep on his shoulder. Got to be the reason he rushed home. Got to be his person. And the worst part? She knew. I saw it in the way she looked at me. Sometimes playful, sometimes wary, sometimes like she saw straight through me and wasn't impressed with what she found. She never said it out loud. She didn't need to. There was a night, not long after they moved in together, when Chris passed out early after a long shift. Lena and I were both still up, sitting on the tiny balcony drinking gas station wine out of mugs. She looked at me over the rim of hers, something sharp in her smile. You ever think about how things would be different if I wasn't around? I froze. What? I mean, she said, stretching like a cat. You two have a whole thing, right? History. Banter. That weird mental telepathy guys have when they've known each other too long. I forced a laugh. It's not like that. She shrugged. Sure. Just saying, some people hover so close to the line, they forget it's there. Then she stood up, flicked her cigarette over the edge, and walked inside. I sat out there for a long time, staring at nothing, wondering if I was hovering. If I'd already crossed without even realizing it. Or worse, if I had always known and crossed it. Here's the thing nobody tells you about resentment. It doesn't need a reason to grow. It just needs time and silence. And I had plenty of both. After that night on the balcony with Lena, something shifted in me. I started keeping score. Not out loud, not obviously, but mentally, ruthlessly. Every time she forgot to pay a bill. Every time Chris canceled plans to deal with one of her meltdowns. Every time she made that wide-eyed oops face when she screwed something up and Chris just forgave her. She was falling apart, and he kept being the glue. And I kept watching, furious that he never did that for me. Yeah, I know how that sounds. Lena lost another job that fall. I didn't even ask what happened. Chris told me anyway, because of course he did. She just wasn't a good fit for the company, he said, rubbing the back of his neck like he was the one who'd been fired. She's not a good fit for life, I muttered, too low for him to hear. Or maybe he did. He didn't respond. I should have felt bad for her. I should have tried to be a decent human being. But I was so caught up in what I thought I deserved that all I could see were her cracks. And the more I looked, the more I saw myself in them. The job hopping? I'd done that after graduation. The days where she couldn't get out of bed? Yeah, I'd lived those, too. The endless spiral of what am I doing with my life backed by zero answers. Been there. Still there, some days. But I had one thing Lena didn't. I had Chris. Or at least I thought I did. We were still close, texting, hanging out, catching movies. But something was different. There was a weight in our silences now. A gap that hadn't been there before. and I couldn't tell if I was imagining it or if he'd started pulling away on purpose. Then came the night that broke it wide open. Chris had invited me over for game night. Nothing fancy, just Mario Kart and takeout and the usual competitive trash talk. But Lena wasn't there. I found out when I arrived that they'd had a fight. A bad one. She thinks I baby her, Chris said, slumping into the couch. Do you? I asked. He looked at me for a long second. Maybe. I opened a beer, trying to play it cool. She'll be back. I don't know if that's a good thing anymore, he said quietly. And there it was. The door cracked open. I should have shut it. Instead, I said, maybe this is the sign you've been waiting for. Chris gave me a look. You always say stuff like that. Because I care, I said, and it was true, but not the whole truth. That night, he fell asleep on the couch, arm draped over a pillow like it was her. I sat there in the dark, empty bottle in my hand, wondering if I was just waiting for my turn to take her place. And then, God help me, I pictured it. The two of us, laughing over coffee, sharing playlists. Mornings where I'd wake up to him making pancakes, humming off-key in the kitchen. No more watching from the sidelines. Just us. It was a fantasy, one I replayed way too often. But fantasies are dangerous things. They're never built to survive real air. I saw Lena a few days later, ran into her at the grocery store, of all places. She looked exhausted, hair pulled into a half-hearted bun, hoodie stained, eyes ringed with that kind of bone-deep tired you don't fake. She didn't even flinch when she saw me. You win, she said flatly, tossing a loaf of bread into her basket. What? You've been circling for years, Jamie. Go ahead. He's all yours. I should have denied it. Sworn up and down that I wasn't trying to take her place. Instead, I said nothing. Just stood there, stunned. She nodded like she'd expected that. You think you're better than me because you can quote Hemingway and have a LinkedIn page. But you're just as messed up as I am. You're just better at hiding it. Then she walked away. And you know what? That was the moment I realized she wasn't the broken one in this story. I was. Because I wasn't trying to rescue Chris from a bad relationship. I was trying to justify stealing someone who'd already given himself to somebody else. Lena had flaws, real ones. But she loved him. Fiercely. Sloppily. Completely. And me? I loved him, too. But mine came with conditions. Choose me. Fix me. Prove I'm worth it. It wasn't love. Not really. It was hunger. And hunger devours everything, even the parts of you that used to know. It wasn't some grand moment. No thunderstorm. No violin crescendo. Just a Tuesday night, the buzz of a broken street lamp outside Chris's apartment window, and the low hum of a microwave reheating leftover noodles. I was sitting at the edge of his couch, knees bouncing. He was in the kitchen, fiddling with chopsticks and not saying much. He hadn't said much for weeks, to be honest. Things between him and Lena were circling the drain. She'd moved out temporarily, she said. But the note she left behind on the fridge felt pretty permanent. A scribbled mess of need space, and can't do this right now, ending with a half-hearted doodle of a sad face next to the word, sorry. Chris hadn't taken it down. I think he couldn't. Or wouldn't. I should have left it alone. Let him grieve. Let him sort his mess without me slipping into the empty spot on the couch like I'd been waiting for it. But I didn't. Because I'm not that noble. I was never that noble. He handed me a bowl and flopped next to me. Silence stretched, long and awkward. He looked tired again. Not the sleepy kind, more like existentially worn out. She's gone, I said, not a question. He nodded. Yeah. You okay? No. And then, before I could talk myself out of it, before the voice in my head screaming don't do this got any louder, I leaned in. I meant what I said. I told him. He didn't look at me. Just kept stabbing at noodles. I think we could be good together. That got his attention. He looked up, eyes bloodshot, jaw tight. You're serious, he said. I've been serious. His laugh was short and sharp, almost bitter. You waited until she left. I didn't make her leave. No, he said, setting his bowl down. But you've been hoping for it. I didn't deny it. How could I? He stood and started pacing, running both hands through his hair like he was trying to scrape the thoughts out of his skull. I don't even know who you are right now. I'm the same person I've always been, I said. Exactly. He snapped. That's the problem. The words hit harder than I expected. I flinched. You think this is what I need? To go from one emotional mess to another, he said. You've been waiting for a chance to win, Jamie. Not love me. Just win. I do love you. He shook his head. No. You love the idea of me. Don't do that, I said, voice low. Do what? Make me the villain just because I finally said something you didn't want to hear. He stopped pacing, looked right at me. You're not the villain because you spoke up. You're the villain because you've been speaking in code for years, making Lena the bad guy in every story so you could justify how you feel. I never asked for this, I said. No, he said. You just waited for it. And that's worse. The room felt suddenly too quiet. The microwave dinged behind us, but neither of us moved. I need space, he said. You're just scared. Yeah, he said. Of becoming someone who thinks love is a competition. I wanted to fight. To argue. To tell him he was wrong and I was right and Lena never deserved him in the first place. But none of that would have made him stay. So I stood there in the middle of his living room, surrounded by takeout containers and the ghost of 1,000 almosts, and I didn't say anything else. He didn't tell me to leave. I just did. I walked down his steps one at a time, like I was descending from a life I almost had. My chest felt hollow. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. And for the first time since I asked him to leave her, I realized I might have just lost him for good. Not to her. I didn't hear from Chris for 5 days. That might not sound like a lot, but when someone's been your daily rhythm, your good morning, your inside joke at 2 a.m., your should I order tacos or Thai? 5 days is an eternity. The silence felt personal. It wasn't space. It was distance. Cold, deliberate distance. Then came the knock. Not Chris. Lena. She stood at my door like a ghost that got bored haunting someone else. Hoodie, unwashed hair, makeup smudged in a way that didn't seem intentional. She didn't even wait for an invite, just walked in, tossed her bag on my couch, and said, You really did it, huh? I closed the door behind her slowly. Did what? She turned, eyes locked on mine, and for once there was no sarcasm in her voice. No flippant tone. Just something heavy. Final. You finally tried to take him. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I always knew, she said. The looks. The jokes. The way your mood would drop the second I walked into her room. I wasn't trying to ruin anything, I said. Oh, please, she scoffed. You were waiting for it to fall apart so you could sweep in like some tragic, poetic upgrade. My jaw tightened. He deserves better. And you think that's you? Silence. She shook her head. I'm not perfect. I know that. I've made a mess of almost everything. But at least I didn't pretend to be something I'm not. That one hit harder than I expected. Because she was right. I'd wrapped my bitterness in logic. Dressed up my resentment as concern. Framed my desire as destiny. But in the end, all I really wanted was to be chosen. To stop being the supporting character in someone else's life. Lena sat down on the arm of my couch, arms crossed. You don't even love him. My head snapped up. Yes, I do. No, she said, calmly. You love the idea of him. You love that he sees you. That he listens. That he makes you feel like you matter. But loving someone means showing up when it's inconvenient. It means staying when it's messy. You didn't love him through the mess. You waited on the sidelines with popcorn. I didn't have a comeback. She'd stripped it down to the bone. She stood up, slinging her bag back over her shoulder. I don't know what's going to happen with him. But I do know this. If he walks away from both of us, it won't be because I wasn't enough. She looked me up and down, eyes unreadable. It'll be because neither of us were. Then she left. No screaming. No slamming doors. Just a quiet exit that felt more brutal than any argument ever could. The next day, I got a text from Chris. Need to talk. Not today. Not tomorrow. But soon. I didn't reply. Because I knew what was coming. I'd stepped over a line and set the ground on fire behind me. And now the only thing left was smoke. I didn't see Chris again for 3 weeks. That's enough time to overthink every word, every look, every moment you swore meant something. Enough time to cycle through guilt, denial, anger, and finally, silence. The kind where you stop waiting for a text and start charging your phone without checking it every 10 minutes. When we did finally meet, it wasn't dramatic. Just a coffee shop. Neutral territory. Middle of the afternoon, half empty. The kind of place with indie music playing too low to be comforting and baristas who don't bother pretending to care. He was already sitting at a table by the window when I walked in. Hoodie. Backwards cap. The same tired eyes. Hey, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Hey, he said back. No hug. No smile. Just recognition. Like two people seeing each other clearly for the first time in a long time. There was a long pause before either of us spoke again. I thought about calling you 100 times, he said. I thought about blocking your number 100 times, I said. We both smirked at that briefly. Then it faded. He took a sip of coffee. Lena's staying with her cousin. She's thinking about moving out of state. Fresh start. I nodded. That makes sense. She didn't blame me, he added, looking down at the table. She blamed us. The word hit like gravel in the throat. Us. It used to mean something soft, familiar. Now it felt jagged, unsettled. She's not wrong, I said quietly. He looked at me then, really looked. What were we, Jamie? I stared out the window, watching a kid struggle to parallel park a beat-up Civic. I don't know, I said. I think I wanted to believe we were everything. He let out a slow breath. I think you saw me as your exit plan. Like if you could just get to me, everything would make sense. That stung, because it was too close to the truth. I'm sorry, I said. Not dramatic. Not performative. Just a simple, clean apology I should have offered weeks ago. Chris nodded. I know. We sat in silence for a bit. Not the tense kind. The exhausted kind. Like two people sitting in the rubble after a fire, waiting for the smoke to clear. Then he stood. I'm not mad at you anymore, he said. But I don't think we can go back. I nodded. I don't think we should. He hesitated, like he wanted to say more. Then he walked out. And that was it. No dramatic confrontation. No rain-soaked confession. Just a quiet ending in a coffee shop that no one else in the world would ever care about. But I did. After that, life didn't change overnight. I didn't suddenly find closure in a fortune cookie or meet someone new who made everything okay. What happened was smaller, quieter. I stopped checking his Instagram. I started sleeping through the night. I applied for a writing workshop I'd been scared of for years. And I started journaling, not because I had something profound to say, but because I needed to put the noise somewhere. One night, weeks later, I found a picture tucked inside a book from college. The three of us. Me, Chris, Lena. Sunburned and smiling at some beach I barely remembered. I almost threw it away. Instead, I tucked it back in the book and closed it gently. Because yeah, I crossed a line. But I also learned something most people take a lifetime to figure out. Love isn't always noble. Wanting someone doesn't make you the better choice. And sometimes, being honest means admitting the damage you've done and walking away anyway. I didn't get the ending I wanted. But maybe, just maybe, I got the one I needed.